Hey there boys, today I want to show you something that I think has gone under a lot of people's radars, but is actually surprisingly effective. Currently we're in a very rocket launcher dominated meta, and that's been the case for over 6 months now, and it hasn't really changed a whole lot since Season 21, when they released Apex Predator and Cold Comfort both in the same season, being the two rockets with bait and switch. And overall, bait and switch is certainly the best damage perk in the game overall per rocket. While you can get more damage out of Surrounded, it's obviously much more difficult to set up, and it doesn't always work in every situation, which is why bait and switch has been considered the best for so long. And specifically Apex Predator for having almost every desirable reload perk in the game, along with bait and switch on it, all on one rocket launcher. To put it in perspective for you, I actually have 5 fully crafted and enhanced Apex Predators that are just either in my vault or on my characters, simply because there's that many super good or important roles for the gun. That being said, we got a new kit on the block this season in the form of the Crux Termination 4. I think a lot of people showed this off, but it hasn't really been something that I've seen catch on, but I really want it to because I think it's actually really cool. Most people would blow off Explosive Light for bait and switch, and they'd be right, Explosive Light is not as good as bait and switch, mainly because it doesn't apply to the wolf packs, and bait and switch is also a larger damage buff. However, this rocket gets an extra rocket for its frame and also can dump its rockets much quicker. However, Apex is still going to be the best for the most part because it's good for rotations, which is better most of the time. If you didn't know, at the start of Season 22 last season, there was actually a bit of a nerf/bug fix to Galley which made it do much less damage. Because of this, it has shortened the gap between Explosive Light and bait and switch, but it is still important to know that bait and switch is better. But why do I bring all this up? Well, that new kit on the block, Crux Termination 4, actually is able to roll with Slide Shot, and it's the first rocket launcher in the game ever to roll with Slide Shot. While we do have Slide Ways on other rockets, including the Apex Predator, Slide Shot does not have any sort of cooldown pretty much. It's a 0.3 second cooldown, which is shorter than the rate of fire of a rocket launcher actually. Meaning that it is the best perk in the game for dumping rockets. You can dump all 10 rockets in less than 10 seconds using this rocket launcher with no exotics or builds, handling perks, reload perks, or anything. Just the perk itself lets you unload all 10 rockets in less than 10 seconds. Which is obviously insanely powerful for dealing damage very quickly. This is the same damage window that we have with the Cataphract GL, about 10 seconds, where you can dump all of the grenades from that using bait and switch, which was already super powerful. But now we have this ability on a rocket launcher. However, the one downside to this rocket is that it doesn't have access to bait and switch. The two relevant damage perks it has are Surrounded and also Explosive Light. Now the first thing anybody is going to do to compare a new rocket launcher that could be contending for the meta is obviously going to be to compare it to Apex Predator. So let's have a look. But really quickly before we do that, I want to thank everybody who's been watching the videos. It means a lot to me. My absolute favorite thing is getting to respond to comments, so if you do have anything you want to say, make sure to leave a comment below and I will be sure to read it. Anyways, let's go ahead and look at how this rocket stacks up compared to Apex. So the first thing to look at is going to be the frame type, the archetype. The Apex Predator is an adaptive frame rocket launcher, and the Crux Termination is an aggressive frame rocket launcher. For those who don't know, rocket launchers on the 4 archetypes have different damage amounts that they do, and aggressives and adaptives are both matching each other for the best in the game, with high impacts doing 10% less damage than them, and precisions doing 20% less than them. The real big difference between aggressives and adaptives, since they have the same damage, is going to be in their stats and their ammo reserves. This is not always the case, but for the most part, aggressive frame rockets are able to get an extra rocket out of reserve mods compared to adaptive frames. However, adaptive frames have better stats, which means that they generally have a higher reload and, more importantly, a higher handling stat. And while Crux Termination might be missing out on the higher handling that an adaptive frame might have, it really doesn't need any handling because there's no weapon swaps involved with just sliding a lot. Whereas, with Apex being more of a rotation-based weapon by using Reconstruction as its primary reload perk, I actually prefer it being an adaptive and losing that one rocket to have higher handling. So we are going to do 2 comparisons between Apex and Crux Termination because they both have 2 roles that I think are almost in direct competition with each other. We're going to be comparing the classic Reconstruction bait and switch Apex with the Slide Shot Explosive Light Crux. To put it simply, Apex has more damage per rocket by having bait and switch, obviously. However, it only has about 20k more damage per rocket. So having an extra rocket by being an aggressive frame, and also being able to dump them faster with Slide Shot, pretty much means that Crux can actually beat out Apex pretty easily. Again, this was a relatively recent change. If we were to get this in Season 21, this would have been blown out of the water by bait and switch because of the major impact that Wolfpacks used to have. I'm going to spare you guys the lengthy math explanation and instead just put up like a 10-second page with all my numbers. You can pause the video and look at them if you care. If you don't, then just keep watching. So as we can see with the total damage, they are pretty close to each other, but Crux does have just a little bit more. This means that pretty much the one that does damage faster is going to be the better one overall. Aegis has already done perfect timings for this, and they came out to just over 9 seconds for Slide Shot and just over 10 seconds for Radiant Dance Machine dumps with Apex. However, I decided to time them myself, and I pretty much just added 1 second to both in my actual execution of it, so I still think it's a fair value to go with, and we're going to go with mine. But I pretty much just pointed that out to show that even if there was any sort of execution error on my end, it's still about the same relative to each other, just both are a little bit quicker. And this pretty much just leaves us with one more point, and that's going to be ease of use. And this is going to be where Crux has its downfall. While slide shotting on Crux does allow you to get a little bit more DPS and total damage than Apex, it requires quite a bit more effort as well. And let's not forget that Apex is much more meant to be used in rotations, whereas this is purely a dumping rocket. It's kind of a one-trick pony for that. All it does is dump rockets super good. And it's sort of the same reason that people use Apex over Cold Comfort, even though that even has bait and switch and 10 rockets. Apex has a lot going for it, even though it technically has less raw damage than the Crux. For example, it's solar, which means you can pair it with Merciless, which is one of the best damage combos in the game, the Apex Merciless combo. And again, in addition to that, just in general, it's more suited to rotations. You could do easy swapping and everything like that on Apex, but you can't do the same on Crux. However, Crux will certainly come in lead for shorter damage phases. I especially think it will be a big deal for the Garden bosses, for people doing that. Garden is going to demand the dumping rockets because you have like those 15-second damage phases, so you're going to want to be using a Cold Comfort or this now. Another big one I think is going to be the final boss on Warlord's Ruin, where you're given generally 10 to 20 seconds. Most teams are going to only get the 10, and you can actually shoot all your rockets off during damage that time on each floor. So as long as you're farming up ammo with stuff like Cenotaph and Sunshot with Ammo Finder and Scouts, you're actually going to be able to get back an entire reserve of rockets every floor and actually take them out super quick that way. I have no doubt that this rocket is likely the key to one-flooring Hefend easily by using Surrounded instead of Explosive Light, but still, it's a very strong rocket overall, and I do highly recommend it if you get one. Give it a go.